I'm John Yarker with Citywire Wealth Manager. Joining me today is Alan Custis, manager of the Lazard UK Omega Fund. So Alan, should we go for as long as 10 lasts?
Sure.
Great,
Let's do it.
What's your view of banks? Do you think they're going to become the sweethearts of the income investing world again?
I'm not convinced.
Okay.
I'm not convinced. I think that there are a lot of headwinds still for the banks. We saw in the recent budget the Chancellor changed the sort of taxation regime around the banks, moving from a levy to a surcharge. I think the capital requirements of the banks are obviously still, have the potential to be changed in a negative way, i.e. they need to hold more capital. And I think PPI continues to go on, although there is, a degree of conversation now going on about actually getting some finality to that situation. But then more recently we've had a small case called Plevin, which may, at the moment, it's very difficult to quantify, and it's around commissions paid on products where you pay on a direct debit basis. So there continue to be some headwinds from our standpoint. Banks are making reasonable ROEs. They're not great return on equities, and yes, there will be some dividends coming back, but I think there are probably potentially some safer dividend payers out there with a greater degree of predictability.
Now we've seen Aldi and Lidl grow their market share at the expense of their competitors. Can I ask your view on this?
I think it has wider implications for the UK market. I think, as you said, Aldi and Lidl now 10% of the UK supermarket space, having grown dramatically at the expense of the other major supermarket players. But I think it's symptomatic of a shift in how people are consuming. And I think that sort of value is now a permanent feature of people's spending patterns post the global financial crisis. And so how do we reflect that in the portfolio? I think that we hold Associated British Foods. Obviously part of that is Primark, and actually interestingly today they're opening their store the first store in the US in Boston. So that will clearly be, a key driver as to whether that's going to be a successful market for them. Clearly, we anticipate it being, but the first 6 months of Boston will clearly be give us a pointer as to how successful US option could be. So, but I do think that the growth of some of the Poundlands, the B&Ms, the retail landscape in the UK has permanently changed, and I think people are now always on the lookout for value. As we know, they shop more frequently, the basket sizes tends to be smaller, and with that backdrop, Tesco's obviously trying to restructure themselves as well, and it's going to be a long period of restructuring for Tesco's.
Overall in the portfolio, what are their sort of areas or trends are you looking to exploit more, or is there anything that you're not ready to introduce to the portfolio but you're keeping an eye on?
We think the cruise market is now in a structural growth phase for the next 2 or 3 years.
That's why, sorry.
Because I think that the capacity that entered the market in 2011-12, i.e. before the global financial crisis, the cruise companies invested in a lot of ships. They entered the market at exactly the wrong time. It takes about 3 years from ordering a ship to actually receiving it, 3 to 4 years. So entered the market at the wrong time, frankly, from a consumer demand standpoint. Yields as a result fell sharply. We have now worked through that excess capacity. China's come in as potentially quite a substantial new cruise market and maybe taking up to 10% of the capacity of the cruise market. There's no new capacity coming in. So what we're seeing from the likes of Caribbean, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian Cruise is actually yields now improving. And there's good visibility on that for the next 2 or 3 years, as I said, because it's not like an aeroplane where, frankly, we could buy one this afternoon if we wanted to get one. There are only 3 shipyards in the world that make cruise liners. They're all in Europe, and there's going to be a long lead time.
Well, we just hit tennis, so thank you very much for your time. It's very interesting.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.